called Whittleby. It was a subscription commerce company. We sold kids' clothing on a monthly basis. You'd sign up, as your kid would grow, we would ship you kids' clothing. About a year ago, almost about maybe a month short of a year, I was sitting kind of over here where Christine is on her phone not paying attention. I was sitting right exactly there. I could call you out because I work with you. I was sitting right there and I got an email. The email was basically one of those emails as a CEO that you don't want to get. You get many of those being a startup CEO. The email was basically that a merger had fallen through. It was our 5th attempt, maybe our 6th, to try and sell the company after about 6 months trying to get it funded. And that was the end. Unfortunately, 10 minutes after that, I had to come up here on the stage and talk about how well my company was doing. So that was difficult, but we got through that. But the reality was what I got up here, and I basically told a ghost story. The company was dead. We were 6 figures in debt. We couldn't make payroll, so we were in a bad spot. So actually, that next Monday, I resigned to my board. A few days after that, fired all the staff. Like I said, that company was dead. And so I want to talk a little bit about a few mistakes I made along the way. It was a combo of sort of marketing conditions and my own screw-ups. It's great to hear, like I said, from successful people. I think you learn more from failure, so let's get right into it. So the biggest thing I see a lot is your passion outstrips your experience. And this is, that is a great image. And so for me, my passion was my family, my kids. I was a new dad. I saw how much money that we were spending as a new parent. As an entrepreneur, I wanted to get some of that money and build a business around that. I also took one trip to the store with my wife and my daughter, and it was a nightmare. And from that point on, I said I will never go back into a store. Instead, I built a company to try and help moms just like my wife. But a lot of entrepreneurs, and I see this now that I'm in venture and I'm a venture partner at 500, I see a lot of folks where your passion outstrips your experience. That's okay, but in some cases, passion doesn't pay the bills, and you can only hit your head against the wall so many times until it starts to hurt. So let's talk about a few pro tips. So one thing you want to be doing is constantly hiring smarter people than you. If you are the smartest person in the room at every meeting, there's a problem. And so most new founders and most new entrepreneurs, they make the mistake of hiring friends, people they've known for a while. In e-commerce, it's critical that you have people with experience on manufacturing, logistics, shipping, marketing. You cannot learn on the job. It is very expensive to learn on the job. An e-commerce startup is not as iterative as a phone app, like an iPhone photo app or a mobile app. A photo app, you can go sit in a corner, you can tweak it, you can try 10 different things. E-commerce, it's very expensive and very costly to iterate. Know your arrogance is going to be very expensive. So just think about that. Every time you make a decision where you think this feels wrong or someone's telling you this is a wrong route or you've gotten conflicting advice and you're just going to push through because you're stubborn, know that's going to be expensive. So just make sure that you're making the right decision when you use your arrogance and, like I said, put your head through that wall. And then beyond that, get some real industry BFFs. And this is honestly where I screwed up. So people that have been on the stage, people that you see here, I was too busy building my business, trying to keep the cracks from cracking too big, trying to get orders out the door. I didn't get enough industry BFFs that could help me sort of guide the path. People like Andy Dunn, so forth. Like, I reached out a little bit, but to be honest, I just felt they were too busy, probably didn't want to help me. The reality was they would, and I've done the same thing for many entrepreneurs that have come to me. I think e-commerce is a type of business where people are more willing to help, especially if you're not competitive. So feel free to go to these events, reach out, ask for help. You'll be amazed what people will do for you. You want to get great advisors as well. So you want to go out of the startup world, go to retail, go to wherever you need to get those experts. Next, shipping fail. Shipping is fucking hard. And it's actually the biggest thing that I didn't really think about. And I thought, you know what? We've been shipping stuff for hundreds of years. This will be easy. Go get a little warehouse, get a few people, get some of those cool things that are like pallet jacks, get all the tools, little scales. Like, it was fun. It was really exciting and interesting. And I'm a little bit of an engineer, so I loved optimizing that stuff. And I said, you know what? People have been doing this for a million years. We'll be just fine. The reality is shipping is very, very hard. And to kind of illustrate that, where it really hits you is this is your customer's happiness and their patience over time after placing an order with you. And so the other reality is that we live in an Amazon world. Everyone wants everything in 2 days. You, as an early stage e-commerce company, are probably not as big as Amazon. You probably don't have the team that they have, but the expectation is there. So we do live in that type of society. Everyone wants it extremely fast. So what you start to experience is when a customer places an order, they're happy. They've done it, they've filled out that form, they were successful, they moved on. Later on, a few days later, they actually get even happier sometimes because the level of anticipation is building. They know that order's on the way. It's like when you know you're going to get laid. It's on the way. It's a sure deal. You're just excited about it. So you actually get a little bit happier. But as you can see, you lose that really quickly. And then after week 2, they start to get concerned. Where's that package? What happened? Did it not go through? Did my dog eat it? Did someone steal it? So they start to get a little bit concerned. Then they start to get mad. And they start emailing you. And they start going to your Facebook page. And like I said, like in a bad relationship, hey, you know what? We both said things we didn't mean. We got really caught up in the moment. I went to your Facebook page and yelled at you. That happens a lot. Week 3, they're basically pissed. You know what? You're basically to the point where you can't really win them back. At this previous step, maybe you could draw them back in and say, hey, here's the number. You know what? Something happened in Alaska and a polar bear fell in the truck. But at this point, come week 3, it's really hard to win them back. They're just pissed. Beyond that, they're out for blood. They are beyond pissed. Now they're going to go destroy your online reputation. They're going to tell all their neighbors. They're going to make threatening phone calls. We dealt with moms, and I actually had a mom call us and said, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have some free time when my kids are napping. Every time my kid is napping, I'm going to be working on destroying your online reputation. That's what she said. That's exactly what she said. And so that was a situation where it's like, well, what do you do with that? But once again, her order was 3 or 4 weeks late. We didn't manage shipping well, and that was an issue. Beyond that, you ruined Christmas. You ruined Christmas, you ruined my birthday, you ruined my life. They've given up at this point. This is the chargeback moment as well, too. The chargeback, the nastiness continues. You will likely never have them as a customer again. So pro tips on that, go to a 3PL as fast as you can, especially at the early stage. 3PL stands for third-party logistics. There's a lot of them, probably not in Silicon Valley because the rents are so damn high, but if you go down to LA, if you go to other places, if you go to Memphis, other hubs, these are good places to have a 3PL. This is a hard jump to make, especially if you're shipping stuff out of your house and maybe your small office. You like having stuff there, you have a level of control. Usually you're so disorganized that you're not organized enough for a 3PL, but it is a forcing function to get you to be focused. And we did do this, and it actually helped. And when we had a rush of orders, my team didn't have to come in on the weekend because they just roll up more people and they could handle hundreds of orders a day. Whereas in our tiny little meager warehouse, we struggled to do that. They forced us to move into an ERP that we really used to manage inventory better, to work with manufacturers and vendors, to basically help us get our shit together. So my feeling is your early stage, do it from your house, get to a 3PL as fast as you can. You may bring that back in-house as you get scale, but early on it can be definitely beneficial. Fight with your vendors more. I was a nice guy. You should be fighting with your vendors constantly. You should be cheating on them, talking to their competitors, getting a better price sheet, and taking it to them and saying, this is my price sheet, I will leave you. And be confident with that. And they will fight for your business, and especially if you have a little relationship. So always go and fight with them. I'm not saying be a jerk and every week call up and ask for a discount. Be fair, be reasonable. But once again, they need your business. And especially if your business is growing, that's when I found you have the most leverage because they see the upside, they see the future. They don't want to lose you to a competitor. So go fight with them more often, get better pricing. And then set good expectations. And I think this is also somewhere we could have definitely done better. Oh yeah, order's on the way, it's going to be out in 2 days. You know what, we weren't 100% sure on that, and turns out it was 4 days later or 5 days later. That means a lot. And so make sure you set expectations really well. And I remember we had Google Ventures was one of our investors. We raised about 2.5 million, so decent amount of funding, although maybe small for e-commerce. And I talked with them, and one of the most helpful things they did is they said, go to Google and try and get help. Try and get someone on the phone. Try and get help. You can't, and that's the reason. They've set that expectation that you will go help yourself. Mostly because they have 1 billion users, it's not easy to answer the phone for 1 billion users too. But they really help drive in the fact that setting good expectations, helping people find their own answers, and not giving inaccurate information, because it could really hurt you. And then of course, it's worth discounting when you screw up. So if you're charging for shipping and you've screwed up and it's late, give free shipping. Give them a discount on the next order. It is incredibly expensive typically to acquire a customer, especially in the early days. And so if you can satisfy that person with that screw up on shipping, keep them as a user, you can get that second transaction. And most e-commerce businesses are dependent on multiple transactions. It's very rare that a one-time business or a one-time purchase can make the business. The next ones are margins that you can't fix or bad margins. Our margins were sort of fluctuating. Some months they were amazing. Some months they were 40, 50%. Some months they were 5%. So that makes it difficult for fundraising. That makes it difficult for cash flow. And so owning your margins and making the right decisions early on is really critical to that. The few ways that you do that is a lot of upfront testing. And honestly, I did a lot of this. I did a lot of landing pages. I didn't do enough. So do a lot of testing up front where you're showing people multiple pricing points, gathering data around how they feel about those pricing points, and making sure you're making the right decision. For us, it was a monthly subscription, so it was a flat cost. So it wasn't variable, it wasn't a marketplace, it wasn't different products. So it's not easy for us to change that. Once people say, I signed up for $20, that's what they're thinking till the end of time. To say it's now going to be $24.95 is a different story. So test up front and then test some more. Definitely should have done a lot more of that. Avoid discounting. This is easy, especially when you're working with parents and with moms. There's so many services. Moms love a good coupon. And so we tested a lot of this. What happened in my experience with discounting is those were the worst customers you could ever get. They just didn't really care. They never came back, and they were a customer service nightmare. Like the one that was calling and said, I'm going to ruin you guys, probably a Groupon user. But in the early days, like we talked about, growth, 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 that was the focus. My background is online marketing, so I put my head down and thought about how to grow the business. To me, that was an acquisition channel, so I was willing to give up a little bit. It was also a subscription, so we felt the LTV would sort of back in and make it worthwhile. But avoid discounting as much as you can. If you do it, do very, very small discounts, just enough to kind of get them over. Or if they're about to lapse, or if it's been 60 days and they haven't made the purchase, then you can throw something out. But do not heavily discount your users. You will get bad users, bad customers as a result. And then when you price things wrong, which you probably will, make those switches as early as you can. And we had to do that. Ultimately, we started at about $40 per month. We had to shift up to, I think it was like $44, $45, $95. Not that much of a difference. We had about 20% attrition as a result. And we actually felt that we managed that attrition fairly well. And so we made that, though, about a year into the business. So the price was solidified in their minds. They kind of had what they thought about what it was a price. And so changing that was very difficult. If you need to change pricing, customers are a lot like kids. If you have kids, you give them two offers. Do you want the green shirt or the blue shirt? I just want to get out the door. You want the blue shirt? Great. If you say, put on this blue shirt, they tend to want to not do that. And so give them two pricing options. Give them one option that is actually pretty horrible that they won't take, and give them the one that they want. And that's what we did. We had one that was basically, we knew no one would take it. I think 2 or 3% did. Everyone went into the program that we wanted. So if you have to make a price adjustment, give them two options as well. Some more feedback. And then find secret unsexy revenue. And for us, didn't do this till the end, but we started building up a following on Instagram. I noticed Instagram was a great place for apparel and clothing. I looked at companies like Black Milk, an Australian company that's doing really interesting things there. We started selling products through Instagram to the tune of about 20 grand a month. And we did that. We ramped up to that with about a month or two. So maybe that's a little more sexy because it's photos. Unsexy might be an example of selling data. Sorry, your data is sold. Your data's been sold 10 times since we've been talking. Lots of companies do this. Lots of big brands do this. There's another subscription commerce company where they make almost no margin on the box, but they're selling to big, dumb companies all this data. So these companies can use that data to make millions of dollars, and they're selling it for many thousands of dollars. So it's an example of unsexy revenue that actually helps the business, sustains the business, lets them control their own destiny. How are we on time, by the way? Okay, cool. Fundraising screw-ups. So this is where I screwed up the worst, maybe which is strange because I became a venture partner, but maybe I'm just better on that side of the table. But fundraising is tough. Fundraising is especially tough for an e-commerce business. It is not going to be easy. I failed at fundraising, and we were doing $3 million a year at that run rate. We had great numbers. We had a few blemishes like any early stage company, but even with that growth and with those numbers, couldn't raise that Series A. So we were Series A crunched. And so a few words to kind of think about that you never want to say to a VC. I've either said these or heard these. Subscription commerce at the time became sort of spoiled. There was a fatigue in the market, and I wasn't really aware of that as I ran out. I didn't realize that other subscription commerce companies that were much larger than I were had been going out for weeks prior and had all been turned down. And so all these companies that had raised $50, $70 million and were struggling, Sean with his cute little company, doing a few $1 million, came right after. And so Marketing conditions are important. Subscription commerce, there was massive fatigue. I tried to sort of pivot and talk about it's a membership service and a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Didn't work. So I'd be careful about the subscription commerce or the trend of the moment. Lifestyle brand feels small. Feels like your lifestyle may be great. Doesn't mean that it's a big business that a VC wants to put money into. Curated artisanal experience. Once again, seems really, really small. May be interesting, you may have a lot of passion around that, but VCs are looking for a big business. Celebrity endorsement, I know Andreessen was talking about this, they love celebs. I'm from LA, I hate celebrities. They get in my way at Starbucks, Celebrities, in my experience, will give a slightly higher conversion rate. They will give a slight bump when you launch the company. They will not sustain and grow a business. They will move on really quick. They will move on, they want too much equity, they're generally a pain in the butt. If you're early stage and have limited money, I would not even think about celebrities at all. Final one, it's Pinterest for. Just don't say that. Pinterest is Pinterest for. Pinterest for this, Pinterest for that. Even if there's a commerce component, still very difficult business to sell. Never go out in quarter four. Quarter four is sort of the death quarter for startups and for fundraising. VCs want to be in Tahoe. They don't want to be funding your business. So you go into VC office in December. It's pretty barren. There's nobody there. They're thinking about next year. January is the time to go out. I went out in October, assuming we could raise the funds in 60 days. We didn't, and then I was trying to struggle through November and December to raise money. Very, very difficult, very challenging. And then know your numbers. And I got to say, we just interviewed about 100 companies for the next accelerator batch. Some of them are e-commerce companies. Big question I always ask, what's your monthly revenue? If the answer is, not good. When someone says, what are your monthly numbers? Hit the hammer on the nail. Tell them exactly what it is. What is your churn rate? What is your customer acquisition cost? Do not give ranges. Say, my acquisition cost is $4.47. I made $17,000 in whatever it is, exactly. Know your numbers. To a VC, you don't have to know them throughout the entire business and memorize every detail. Maybe you should. But if you are giving them ranges, that's the immediate signal that you don't know your shit. Not a good place to be. Last thing, you suck at marketing. Most people suck at marketing. That's okay. I happen to be good at marketing and sucked at everything else. And so we could get the revenue in, couldn't necessarily get the orders out fast enough. So what can you do if you suck at marketing? Just know that you need to try 10 things to find one thing that works. Marketing is much like mining. You have to keep finding new veins. Veins get depleted. New veins get discovered. You will probably need to do 10 things. A thing is Facebook, retargeting, email, SMS. So you may need to try 10 things before you actually have one channel that yields fruit. Learn to ankle bite the big dogs. So big dogs have figured out conversion. They've figured out funnel optimization. They've figured out the acquisition channel. They have big teams, lots of money. Steal their customers, do what they do, put the button in the same place, ankle bite the big guys until you can get up there with them. And then, of course, assume that 100% of your sales will come on a second visit. So that means that if 100% of your sales are not going to convert, you have to be thinking about how do you bring them back. So you bring them back with retargeting, you get a sandwich board and you go on the street, whatever it takes to get that person to come back. The reality is it's more like 98% of the people don't have a conversion on the first time. But just be thinking, I need to work hard to have a very strong net to bring these people back in. And if all that fails, for me, I'm actually going to do something a little less complex and a little less volatile. So I'm going into Bitcoin. I'm looking for Bitcoin companies. We're going to do a Bitcoin panel later if you want to talk about Bitcoin and commerce. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. Question? One really good question, really quick. Is that okay?
Yep, right ahead.
Any questions? Right here. Go ahead.
So I was actually a customer and a fairly satisfied one.
Oh, good.
But my experience, though, was that the quality of the inventory sort of deteriorated over time, and I think maybe that's what you're relating to with your margins. So could you speak a little bit to what's happening there?
Yeah, so that was another. I didn't go into manufacturing because it doesn't apply to every business, but that was an area I had a weakness. I tried to bring the right staff in to satisfy that, but you're right. It was more about, yes, we needed to improve margin to get more money so that we can get back to the high quality of goods. The mission was all about good. As you probably saw in the early boxes, like I wanted to give you 2 to 5x, the value in there too. But yeah, these are the unfortunate things. When you're running out of money, you can't raise money. You have to make sacrifices to your business. So early on, I should have nailed the margin, nailed manufacturing much earlier, so that we could have kept that level of quality too. And it's one reason I left. I just wasn't happy with the business, and I wasn't happy with customers like yourself, who are loving the product, passionate about it, and then it had sort of turned to crap. So yeah, but thank you, and thank you. One more? We're going to sneak one more in? Okay, fine. One more.
So a lot of commerce is geared at women. You ran a women's site or for children, for women doing purchasing. We had two examples this morning. My question is more about fundraising and VCs in general. Not many of the VCs themselves are married to women in the demographic of a lot of the commerce companies. So ModCloth is having trouble. VCs' wives aren't buying ModCloth clothing. The woman from Waterloo had trouble. Maybe Zulily Clothing didn't. This isn't like the feminist, like there's not many VCs on Sand Hill Road thing. How can a company that's addressing women and going with gut and instinct, and you said curation is a bad word, but in shopping, what you buy for your body and your home is so personal, and so, in a way, feminine. How do the VCs value that against or with the numbers?
So the question is, how do you work if you're a female-focused business or a female founder, you're dealing with VCs, how do you get them to understand the product, and how do you also get funding? And I experienced that a lot too, and a lot of VCs, I'd be like, oh, do you carry so-and-so, this brand? And I would go look it up, and I'd be like, this is like some Parisian, exotic, expensive baby clothes. I was like, I'm servicing middle America. Glad that you have a lot of money, but that's not my customer base too. And so I wasted a lot of time, and I think the answer is we need more female VCs. And so 500, we speak that, if you're female and you have a liquidity event, become an investor, help this, because that is going to be one of the main things. But you're right, yeah, they don't relate. And I spent a lot of time wasting with old gray-haired dudes that just couldn't do the product. Halfway through, I optimized around female partners who actually understood it, got much further. And so, yes, I would look for, you need to optimize around the right investors. Those other ones, yeah, I don't think it's going to click. I don't think you can get them to understand that business. They're just too far removed from it. So yeah, you don't want to waste your time with those. You just need to make sure you're pitching the right investors. I just did a blanket approach and pitched to everyone. There's a cohort that I should have focused on. Yep.